Good morning. Welcome to the your midweek show on Leadership Television inside Nigeria. Today is Wednesday, 30th July 2025. And my name is Winifred Ubebo, your host on the program. On today's show, we are looking at what the papers are saying, including Nigeria's foremost newspaper, Leadership, and of course, most influential. On Leadership newspaper, we also have other lineups as well, talking of Daily Times, Vanguard, The Punch, The Guardian, and Blueprint newspapers. But we'll take off with Leadership. Leadership's leading story today, as well as other papers we have on our lineup, says Northern governors defend Tinubu as ACF says is unfair to North. Northern governors defend Tinubu as ACF says is unfair to North. President insensitive to North's plight, says ACF leader that had to. He has fulfilled promises made to the North chairman, Northern State Governors Forum. These are kickers to the leading story on today's Leadership. Northern governors defend Tinubu as ACF says he is unfair to North. By the side of that leading story, 9 million motorists drive on Nigerian roads without insurance. Deputy Speaker Kalu withdraws indigenship bill for further consultations. Disquiet in Ondo as man beheads brother. Nurses midwives commence 7-day warning strike today. Kebbi approves 6-month leave for pregnant female workers. And that story runs on page 26 of Leadership. Kebbi approves 6-month leave for pregnant female workers. And of course, this August 1st to August 7th is celebrated as an exclusive breastfeeding week. And this is coming on top of that. Kebbi approves 6-month leave for pregnant female workers. We'll go to the story later for more on that. Of course, you want to see for exclusive breastfeeding mothers what leave is given to them. Moving up towards the masthead of Leadership, 187 trillion naira debt would be the Christ borrowing without accountability. That story is on page 37 of Leadership. 187 trillion naira debt will be the Christ borrowing without accountability. And on the business boss of Leadership, IMF raises Nigeria's 2025 economic growth projection to 3.4%. IMF raises Nigeria's 2025 economic growth projection to 3.4%. Let's take some excerpts. Of course, that is a cherry one. The International Monetary Fund, IMF, has revised its growth forecast for Nigeria's economy upwards, projecting 3.4% GDP growth in 2025 and 3.2% in 2026. The fund has also called for structural and institutional reforms across sub-Saharan Africa as the region grapples with complex economic challenges. According to the IMF's latest World Economic Outlook, WEO, with the title Global Economy, Seniors, Resilience and Persistent Uncertainty, the upgrade represents a 0.4 percentage point increase from what it used to be. Above the masthead of Leadership, Aregbesola woos Oyinlola to ADC in surprise visit. Aregbesola, former governor of Osun State, woos Oyinlola to ADC in surprise visit. He was also Minister of the Interior, Aregbesola. Bandits driving us away from our farms, plateau farmers. That story is on page 4 of Leadership. It's on that note we move to the page 3 of the paper where we have a stand, a permanent stand, our stand. Today's stand is on let female journalists work in peace. Let female journalists work in peace. Today's stand in Leadership. Let's take some excerpts from today's stand. In the past week, a young journalist with ROFI, Hausa, Hawa Haliru Gwagwazo, faced a wave of online harassment that once again exposed a deep-rooted illness in our media and digital culture. The persistent tendency to judge professional women not by their competence, insight, or contributions, but by the curve of their faces or the accident of their beauty. What began as a handful of posts admiring her on-screen appearance quickly spiraled into a torrent of objectifying, sexist, and vulgar remarks, many of them written in Hausa and spread across Facebook and other social platforms. The comments had nothing to do with her journalism. They had nothing to do with the depth of her reporting or her mastery of the craft. However, let's see what the paper is saying. We call on media houses to do more to protect their female journalists. We urge social media platforms to strengthen their tools for reporting gendered harassment, ensuring that women, not just journalists, are safe in their online engagement. And we call on society, especially men, to check their impulses. A woman in the newsroom is not there for decoration. She is there for impact. Hawa Gwagwazo should not have to choose between being visible and being safe, nor should any other woman in journalism. This is the stance of this newspaper, and we'll continue to use our voice to defend not only Hawa, but every journalist in Nigeria and beyond. Excerpts from today's stand in leadership, which is on page 3 of the paper. Let female journalists work in peace. From our stand, we move over to the back page of leadership, where we have Wednesday column with Olufunke Baruwa. Today, Wednesday, she's writing on entry permits, gatekeepers, emperors, and the politics of control. Entry permits, gatekeepers, emperors, and the politics of control. We'll take a quote from that back page column. A democracy that cannot tolerate the mobility, speech, and philanthropy of a former presidential candidate is a fragile one and a democracy unsure of itself. Quote from today's back page column with Olufunke Baruwa, entry permits, gatekeepers, emperors, and the politics of control. Before we leave the back page, let's visit Ghana Must Go. Ghana Must Go news, presidential aspirant Adamu Garba. It says APC inherited non-existent country in 2015. And of course, Ghana Must Go ask, who is this one? He has every reason to ask. It's on that note we conclude today's review of leadership newspaper. We move ahead to the next paper we have on our lineup, and that is Vanguard. The Vanguard, like I said earlier, also has similar story with that of leadership cover. It says Tinubu reassures North of development as ACF chair, SSGF chair, kick. SSGF kick. Tinubu reassures North of development as ACF, that is Arewa Consultative Forum chair, SSGF, secretary to the government of the Federation, kick. And the riders, my government will leave no region behind in development, Tinubu. Northern governors reaffirm support for president, call for deepened citizens' engagement. Boko Haram bandits attacks declined under Tinubu, coming from NSA Ribadu. Not marginalized under Tinubu, ACF chair. Konkoso is right, North is marginalized, coming from the former SGF Babachi Lawa. Ohaneze Pandef MBF speak. The story continues on page 5 of Vanguard newspaper. Leading story today, Tinubu reassures North of development as ACF chair, SSGF kick. Other stories gracing the cover of Vanguard newspaper this Wednesday. Quality of local government elections still low, says INEC. SIE sees that it takes independent electoral commissions expressed misgivings over Supreme Court judgment on Rivers Council polls. That story is on page 8 of Vanguard. Quality of local government elections still low, says INEC. Of course, INEC is speaking the mind of Nigerians. We all saw what happened during that local government elections that took place across most of the states in the Federation, where videos, online videos, trended of some officials printing ballot boxes. Still on Vanguard newspaper, British High Commission CDIS, that is Chief of Defence Staff, decry killing of 38 kidnapped hostages after ransom payment. That story is on page 9 of Vanguard. British High Commission, CDS, decry killing of 38 kidnapped hostages after ransom payment. Underneath it, Transcom Group records 21% in profit to 85.7 billion naira in first half 2025. 2027, ADC might become another PDP or APC if Lukman wants. Will stop imposition reform. ADC bureaucracy, Mark replies Lukman. And in sports, our next target is to win World Cup, coming from Ajibade, the captain of this victorious Super Falcons. We move towards the masthead of Vanguard newspaper. Doctors, nurses threaten strike nationwide over poor welfare. That story is on page 7 of Vanguard. It's also one of the leading stories on leadership newspaper this Wednesday. Atop the masthead, states tackle federal government over equity ownership of discos, NDPHC. States tackle federal government over equity ownership of discos, NDPHC. IMF upgrades Nigeria's economic growth forecast to 3.4%. Saraki to supporters, I didn't direct anyone to join ADC. And beside that, a beacon of hope and purposeful leadership. Odu President Dr. Also Hayes APC National Chairman Professor Nentawe Yiwatda, that is the new APC National Chairman. Professor Nentawe Yiwatda, former humanitarian minister. With that, we conclude the review of front headline stories on Vanguard newspaper this morning. Don't forget to log into the website of Vanguard for continuation of those headline stories. We move again to the next paper we have on our lineup, and that is Blueprint. Blueprint is still talking the same headline story with the previous newspapers, leadership and the Vanguard newspaper. So Blueprint says at government citizen engagement, Northern Governors, ACF, NEF differ on region's democracy dividends. Tinubu has delivered tangible projects across region, NGF, that is Northern Governors Forum, Akume, Idris. Northern groups want Ajaokuta, Agric education revitalized. That story is on page 14 of Blueprint newspaper. Presidency Defense Falcons 153 million naira awards. Size BB Nigeria's 150 million naira prize money. That's a good one. IMF raises Nigeria's economic growth projection to 3.4% in 2025. Same leading business story in the papers we have on our lineup. Pegs global growth at 3.0%, urges reduction in policy uncertainty. We move towards the masthead. Just beneath, we have Lawa Okes Ibrahim Bello as new emir of Guso. Euromoney names Access Bank Ghana, Gambia Best Banks 2025. And in sports, like the paper before it, Vanguard. The skipper, Super Falcons skipper, says our next target is to win World Cup, coming from Ajibade. That also concludes review of front headline stories on Blueprint newspaper this Wednesday. For more, log into the website of Blueprint. We move to the next paper we have on our lineup, and that is the Punch newspaper. The Punch says power rotation debate heats up as North reviews Tinubu's scorecard. Power rotation debate heats up as North reviews Tinubu's scorecard. Tinubu must complete 8 years, say Afenifere Middlebelt Forum. Opposition tackle APC zoning stand. NIHOT toll sets up panel to sanction tourism offenders. NIHOT sets up panel to sanction tourism offenders. Olubadan Olakunlehin for burial August 8th. That story is on page 30 of the Punch newspaper. Nurses shun federal government talks begin warning strike today. States accuse federal government of sabotaging power sector decentralization. States accuse federal government of sabotaging power sector decentralization. And above the masthead of the Punch, North splits over Tinubu marginalization claim. President abandoned North, says ACF. Northern leaders impoverished region, coming from Kaduna governor. From the Senate, 210 trillion naira audit. Senate demands NNPC response in 3 weeks. That story is on page 32 of the Punch. 210 trillion naira audit. Senate demands NNPC response in 3 weeks. And that concludes review of front headline stories of the Punch newspaper this Wednesday. For more, log into the website of the Punch. We move to the next paper we have on our lineup, and that is the Daily Times. Daily Times says 2027, no vacancy in Aso Villa. APC national chairman tells opposition parties. That story runs on page 2 of the Daily Times. 2027, no vacancy in Aso Villa. APC national chairman tells opposition parties. Plateau relatively safer than other northern states, coming from the governor, Mutwang. Federal government condemns anti-Nigerian protests in Ghana, moves to prevent reprisal. ADC has over 3 million dues paying members. Wonsu. Alleged fraud, Okpebolo fires aid on oil and gas. That story is on page 6 of the Daily Times. Naira strengthens to 1,533 naira per dollar as reserves top $39 billion. We move to the story above the masthead of the Daily Times. Rep talk Jade 7 years for running fake degree courses. That concludes the review of front headline stories on the Daily Times, this midweek edition of the show. Don't forget to log into the website of the Daily Times for more of those stories. We move to the last paper we have on our lineup this Wednesday, and that is The Guardian. The Guardian says discos over B2 million customers struggle with metering and efficiency. Discos over B2 million customers struggle with metering efficiency. That story is on page 6 of The Guardian. And however, beneath that leading story, there's so much illustration to buttress that leading headline story. Commercial performance of discos May 2025, of course, is quite expensive. We also have collection efficiency remains poor as discos rely more on subsidies from the federal government and customer reclassification into Band A, despite a 7.3 million metering shortfall. And of course, all these are calculated beneath different discos across the country. Beneath the illustration, northern leaders criticize Tinubu's record as governor, others rallying defense. I think this is an error. The Guardian actually meant president. Northern leaders criticize Tinubu's record as president, while others rally in defense. Second leading story on The Guardian this Wednesday. Nigerians spent 1.3 trillion naira on PMS in June as Dangote marketers deepen competition. Nigeria's economy to grow by 3.4% this year, IMF affirms. Current security architecture can't contain insecurity, Elias says. Current security architecture can't contain insecurity, the Benue State Governor Hyacinth Elias says. Federal government cautions as Ghanaians allege ritual killings, prostitution against Nigerians. That story is on page 4 of The Guardian. Federal government cautions as Ghanaians allege ritual killings, prostitution against Nigerians. Nihotor raises tribunal to sanitize hospitality tourism sector. That story runs on page 30 of The Guardian newspaper, and it takes us to the stories just beneath the masthead of The Guardian. 210 trillion naira audit gap. I needed time to get it right. NNPC boss tells Senate. Although in another paper that we saw before it, that is the Punch, they gave the NNPC boss 3 weeks to appear. Sorry, in The Guardian, to appear before Senate. NDLE NDLEA auctions drug traffickers' properties in Lagos, Kano, Ondo, Ogun. NDLEA auctions drug traffickers' properties in Lagos, Kano, Ondo, Ogun. Mob lynches police officer's son for beheading brother in Ondo. That's the leading story also in on the cover of Leadership this Wednesday. Disquiet in Ondo as man beheads brother. And the Guardian says mob lynches police officer's son. In other words, this police officer's son was the one who beheaded his brother in Ondo State. That story is on the Metro page 8 of the Guardian. It's also on that note we conclude review of front headline stories on the Guardian Wednesday, July 30, 2025 publication. For more, don't forget to log into the website of the Guardian, www.guardian.ng. So it's also on that note we conclude today's Inside Nigerian Leadership Television. Tomorrow Thursday is another day, another appointment for another fresh edition of the program for Newspaper Review. My name is Winifred Gbebo. Thanks for joining us, and also thanks for staying on this station for news on the hour. Don't go away. Take care.
Thank you for watching. For sponsorship and advert placements, please contact 080-3688-6158. Last Word Leadership Podcast Studio. You have the last word.